Well, hello everybody. How have you been? How you doing? It's been a long time. We've missed you, but we are thrilled to be back with Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles video cast where we talk about everything from the solo years, and of course, more than occasionally, we talk about Beatles as well. Um, as I said, we're thrilled to be back, and we are just going to be bigger and better than ever. Everything you expect, but we're going to have some changes. Nothing major, but I think that you'll find these changes. Well, one major change, but the rest are kind of you know different in that you'll notice this isn't live. And we've decided that for our regular shows, which will still be Monday, they will premiere right now. We're looking at 7 Eastern every other Monday. This will premiere on our channel, and then you can watch any other time you want. But we're not giving up doing live shows. We will periodically do if there's a big news story or maybe we just want to come on and chat. There will be some exceptions. So don't worry, it's not that we're abandoning live broadcasts. So you may also notice something else that our lineup is a little bit different. Tom Hunyadi, at the end of last year, decided to depart Talk More Talk. He was having kind of a hard time balancing both this and Two Legs, and so he decided to leave to focus more on Two Legs. So we wish him well. Great 6 years. I think it's been 6 years now together, and so we wish him all the best. But we have a new member of our crew, which we are very excited about. And gosh, I don't know. I don't know who this person could be.
The
So
new member is a paper
yeah,
bag
it's a
that they
paper
Is this the
bag.
Gong Show?
It's a gong show. That's right. So who could this be?
Who
Why
could it
look?
be?
Why look? It's Darren DeVivo.
How'd that happen?
Oh, what
And
a surprise.
we are
Oh, what a
just Yep, we are just so thrilled to have him here. So let me first introduce myself, Kit O'Toole, Joe Mayo, and Ken Michaels, and Darren DeVivo. I'm sure most of you know him already. He's really been a fixture in the Beatles community for a long time. He is first of all on WFUV 97.7 FM in New York, and has been there for 40-ish years, right? 40 some years.
many pounds ago, and I had much more hair then. But yeah, it's actually 90.7 FM.
Oh,
And
97.7. My bad.
90.7.
90.7. I am
90
so
points.
sorry. Okay, I am so
Um,
sorry about that.
please, you know how many times I've messed it up on the air? But at the end of this month, in February 26th to be exact, is going to be the 41st anniversary of my first show. And now a lot has changed, but still, it's a long time, and I'm thrilled to be, of course, still doing that and still there, but also new opportunities many years later, like this one here, and I'm so excited to be part of this, and was thrilled. Ken actually asked me right before we did a recent Things We Said Today episode.
Hmm.
Yep.
So, and I wish Tom the best. Tom's a great guy.
Yeah.
Tom Hunyadi. You're going to continue to see him on Two Legs and who knows where else. And you don't ever have to see me again with a bag on my head. So, just to be a goof, I decided we'd do that. But thank you for asking me to be on the show, and thank you for having me. And I'll try not to embarrass you guys.
We know you will carry on the Talk More Talk tradition very well. We are just so excited to have you, Darren. And I'm sure, as he just mentioned, he is also the co host along with Ken and Ellen Cozen of Things We Said Today. And so obviously he is extremely qualified to be on this program. So we are just so thrilled. So this is our premiere episode with Darren. And We are going to be talking about this gentleman behind me, right here, which is Ringo and his new album, Look Up, which I know has been out for a little bit, but we haven't had a chance to talk about it on our show. So we are so excited to be talking about it today. So before we get started on that, Ken, tell us what's up.
Well, first of all, I just want to say welcome aboard, Darren. But here on the Ultimate Solo Beatles podcast, we just wanted to prove a point in the way that we presented Darren that on this Solo Beatles show, everybody got a bag. There
Nice.
you go.
A,
That's
a little bagism to get things started.
Bagism, that's right.
All right.
all right. So, as many of you know, and we're actually recording this on the 13th of February, Paul McCartney has done a number of shows in New York City at the Bowery Ballroom, and these have been 90-minute shows. He kind of sprung it on all of us. We in most cases we would find out, well, the first one we found out about noontime, and in order to see the concerts that he's been giving, you had to show up in person, buy a ticket, one per person. It was $50 a piece, and tickets immediately sold out. From what I understand, there was 600 tickets being sold somewhere in that neighborhood. I've heard 560, I've heard 600, and in about a half an hour's time, they were sold out. So he's already done two shows as we speak. He's going to do one on Friday, which will already be a few days. You're going to be seeing this a few days after that. But the shows have been songs that he's done already, really condensed down. He's brought back a few songs that he hasn't done for a while. From Me to You is one of them. Flaming Pie is another one. Getting Better, but for the most part, no, nothing shocking. You know, these are all songs that he's done with the band that he's had for 20 plus years now. And so I certainly hope some of you watching this were lucky enough to get inside there at the Bowery Ballroom. And we don't know, although when this airs, we'll certainly know about all the activities surrounding the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live. There's supposed to be a concert at Radio City Music Hall on Friday night. We don't know if Paul's going to be there. There's also going to be a 3 hour show on Sunday night, but we don't know if that's comprised of all performances from Friday night or anything new that they'll put in for Sunday night. We don't really know at this point, but we'll certainly know by the time that you see this video. So you guys want to comment at all about the craziness for a minute of this past week?
Well, Beatlemania still lives on. People were going nuts, and I liked seeing that. And apparently, I've heard there were a lot of young people in the audience too, which is good to know. I heard that Paul did every night,
Yep.
the second night, which is he's done that before as well. But it's nice to hear that he did that again. And
He also did Mrs. Vanderbilt
yeah,
on the first night.
yeah.
And from what I understand from a few articles that I've read, he was very loose with the crowd. He would ad lib a bit, and one person in the crowd requested temporary secretary. Another person requested, what was it?
Flying to my
Uh,
home.
Flying to my home.
No way. Oh, now
So-
that I would have stood in line for.
Yeah. I would have liked to have seen the expression on Paul's face when when that guy in the audience requested that song. But anyway, all I can say is, regardless of the set list, whether you want him to do new material that he's never done before, there's nothing like seeing one of your favorite artists in a small club up close.
Absolutely.
Also, as I'm sure you know, Paul was spotted with his wife Nancy at the Super Bowl, and don't quite know which team he was rooting for, but it's nice to see him turn up at events like Yankee games and Met games, and he is, Mr. Sports at this point, I suppose. The Grammy Awards we need to talk about because the Beatles came up big. Although if you watch the broadcast of it, you would never know it because they really they didn't feature rock acts on the show all that much. But the Beatles won for Best Rock Performance for Now and Then. And also Sean Lennon won with Simon Hilton for Special Limited Edition package for the archival box set for Mind Games. In addition to that, as a side note, Beyonce came up big with her album Cowboy Carter, which won Album of the Year and Country Album of the Year, and that has her version of Blackbird on there. And the Rolling Stones won Best Rock Album of the Year for Hackney Diamonds. A lot of that is influenced from Joe's opinion on the internet and how much he loves that album. It's the best
Great
album
album.
they've done in a long time, according to Joe. So you got to take notice of when Joe says these things. But it did include Paul playing bass on the song Bite My Head Off. Now, the only thing I found strange about the whole thing was that Paul or Ringo were not there at all, but Giles Martin was. And as a matter of fact, Sean made a speech on behalf of the Beatles because Giles apparently was supposed to do it, but he showed up late. So it was a surprise to Sean that he had to give some kind of small speech, but he did it. He sounded great doing it too. But nice night for the Beatles overall, right there. Also, this is big news that I mentioned on things we said today this week that I'll bet Kit and Joe don't know about. It is the premiere of Paul and Babs, meaning Barbra Streisand, who is putting out an album of duets, and Paul is on it with her. And I don't know for sure. I've heard rumors that they recorded My Valentine together.
Oh, that would make sense.
Yeah. So, but one of the greatest singers ever, Barbra Streisand. What a dream that is for to have a duet with Paul. You know, Paul once in a while does a duet, but not that often as some other people that we know, like an Elton John or someone like that. But it's nice when once in a while he does that. Also, updated news on the one-to-one documentary, which will be in IMAX theaters on April the 11th, and it'll be shown on HBO later in the year. Now, to celebrate Record Store Day, which is the following day, April 12th, we'll issue a limited edition 12-inch EP called Power to the People, live at the one-to-one concert in New York City. And it has 4 songs on it. It will be on 180-gram yellow vinyl from both the afternoon and evening concerts. 3 of these 4 songs, these recordings of the songs, have never been released before. And those include Well, Well, Well from the evening show, Cold Turkey, and Don't Worry Kyoko from the afternoon show. And the 4th cut, already released, is Instant Karma from the afternoon show. The Record Store Day first release is limited to 3,000 copies, and worldwide, 5,500 copies. Kind of strange it's called Power to the People, and the song is not even on there. But yeah, interesting. So we'll get a taste of it all on this EP and premiering in IMAX theaters on April the 11th. And I just saw there was a trailer for Borrowed Time, which is the other John Lennon documentary. It's all about the last decade of John's life, and that's supposed to be premiering in movie theaters on May the 2nd. So 2 months in a row, 2 documentaries on John Lennon right there. Also on Record Day, there'll be a 12-inch release of the new 2024 remix of George Harrison's Be Here Now, backed by the song being covered by Beck. The Beck version is the first time it's been released, and it's considered an Apple Music exclusive. And George Harrison's All Things Must Pass album, the 2014 remastered version, is coming out as a triple album picture disc Zoetrope on Dark Horse Records. That's all happening on Record Store Day, which is April 12th. Okay, a few other things. We have to note the passing of Marianne Faithfull, She's best known for her recording of the Rolling Stones song As Tears Go By, which made the top 10 in the US on the Billboard charts, peaking at number 6 and number 9 on the UK charts. She's also known for having a long romantic relationship with Mick Jagger. She was also among the background singers for the Beatles recording of Yellow Submarine. And Paul McCartney issued a statement online. He said, "What sad news that Marianne Faithfull has passed away. She came into my life in the 60s and was a beautiful, sweet 17-year-old who radiated innocent joy. Then through the years, I was lucky enough to run into her and to become a lifelong friend. It's very sad to think that I won't be meeting her again, but my memories of our encounters over the years will always bring me joy. May God bless you, Marianne, and guide you in the next steps of your journey, Paul." And also some nice words from Julian Lennon that he posted on Facebook. "So very sad to hear of Marianne Faithfull's passing. A uniquely special soul. She was one of a kind, someone who truly did stand out among her contemporaries. Deepest condolences to her family and friends." And among the songs covered by Marianne, we have Yesterday, I'm a Loser, Working Class Hero, Isolation, and Beware of Darkness. She covered all those songs. Marianne died on January the 30th at the age of 70. I also heard that John Kurlander has passed away, the engineer who worked on the Beatles' Abbey Road album. It's funny how this one thing sticks out in my mind about John Kurlander, that he was the guy that cut the tape that took Her Majesty out of the medley in between Me, Mr. Mustard, and Polythene Pam, and stuck it at the end of the master reel after the leader tape. And when they played it back, because he was told to save everything by the Beatles, they heard Her Majesty at the end after a long gap, and apparently they loved it. It was like a nice joke to stick at the end, and it's all because John Kurlander left it there. So if you love Her Majesty, thank John Kurlander for that. But he just recently passed away. Also, the April 4th, 2025 issue of Guitar World has George Harrison on the front cover, which reads 40 years worth of his greatest songs, solos, and innovations. It also says that's an interview with Danny Harrison, who discusses George's Living in the Material World album. Thank you, John Bazzini, for that information. And I should also mention that there will be a 3-day symposium called A Dream You Dream Together, a symposium celebrating Yoko Ono, being held this very weekend, February 14th through the 16th, at the New York City Armory in their listening room. And our good friend Madeline Baccaro, who wrote the excellent book In Your Mind, The Infinite Universe of Yoko Ono, she will be there doing a reading from her book on Friday at 6 p.m. And for Saturday and Sunday, the symposium will be open from 1 to 7 p.m. And also remember, next week, Yoko Ono celebrates her 92nd birthday.
Wow.
That's next Tuesday. All right. And that's about it for now.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ken. So let's get to our main topic. And if regular viewers of this show will know that we have said many times, why won't Ringo record another country album? We love Buku Blues. Why won't he do another one? He certainly has recorded country songs, here and there over the years on albums, but never a full album again until now. And we finally got what we wanted. Look Up came out. Yes, there's the vinyl version and the CD version. See, we have
Look
it
at
all
this!
covered here.
Look at this great cover. Back
Yep.
cover.
Looking cool.
Nice cover.
Looking so cool. And produced by T-Bone Burnett. And it is a really fascinating album that delves into, I think, Ringo's, love of the genre. So speaking of genre, let's start out with this, because I'm sure you've all seen this online. And in fact, when Ken, you just mentioned Cowboy Carter, it's a good way to get into this. Let's talk about genre. Because some people are saying this isn't really a country album. You know, that it's not, you know, what you'd call traditional throughout. So, you know, how would you classify this album? I mean, do you think it is straight country? Do you, you know, how would you define it? So Darren, as you know, the new member of our crew, what do you think, you know,
Um,
about the,
I mean, country music is like any other genre. There are so many divisions and subdivisions of those subdivisions that it's almost impossible to actually say what is officially country. You know, it's a feel, it's a sound. You know, I've through the years listened to bands that to me are a little more rock, yet they would be called alt country. It's another of subdivisions, right? Alternative country. What is that? Tends to be more alternative rock. The lines are so blurred. Um, in listening to this album, if you don't come away saying it's a country album, or at least it's a country-ish album, I don't know what you would classify it as, if you need to classify it. Like, for example, I think I mentioned this on Things We Said Today, that um, Bukus of Blues is a country album, okay? And Look Up is a country album, but if you played them side by side, they sound very different.
Mhm.
They're not the same. It's like taking it's like taking the Beatles doing You Know My Name, Look Up the Number, Helter Skelter, and Yesterday, and playing them side by side. It's the same band. It's the same category you want to put them in. Just different things going on there. And with these two albums that Ringo did 50 some odd years apart, they're very different sounding. And that's a good example of, what is country, what is rock, what there's no real way, there's no definition, but it's in the sound, it's in the feel. Bukus of Blues, what I was leading to, was always sounded to me like it was a very old school, traditional country and western album. It's like what was coming out of Nashville earlier in the 60s. I forget the producer's name. Um,
too?
she did Katie Lang did an album that he produced, I believe, called Shadowland.
Mhm.
And while he wasn't the only producer, obviously, he was a big enough name and created a sound that always reminded me, I'll look it up here in a minute, always reminded me of what old school country and western sounded like. And that's sort of what Bukus of Blues uh, uh, is reminiscent of. This is completely different, but it is still country. I mean, pedal steel guitars left and right and Alison Krauss. It's
Mhm.
a country album. And if you're having problems with that, then don't call it anything. In fact, I found myself referring to it as Ringo's first full-length album in over 5 years. And then mentioning, by the way, it's a country-ish or countrified or um, but Ringo's loved this kind of music, and we've known that. And every once in a while through the years, we'd hear maybe Ringo's thinking of, or Ringo should do, like you said, Kit. Well, he's done it, and it sounds to me, and we'll get to this maybe, the genesis of this project does sound like it came a little bit out of the blue, even to Ringo,
Mhm.
Yeah.
even though he's done this before, and he's probably heard fans saying, do it again. But it's a country album. I mean, Beyonce's record, maybe I approached as a skeptic till I heard it. And it's like, well, find a subdivision for it, but it's country music.
Yeah.
I kind of went around in circles, but hopefully you got my gist. It sounds country-ish. It is country.
Her
Yes, that-
interpretation of it. Yeah. And I love the album as well. I think it's a great album. And yeah, so you know, and some people have called this Americana. You know, some people have used
Yeah,
that term
yeah.
you know, instead of country. So
And
I'm
Americana says a lot without saying anything.
yes.
And for many, many years, that was the core of WFUV sound, was
Mhm.
Americana. What was it? Well, It could be Wilco. It could be Lyle Lovett. It could be an old Johnny Cash tune. It could be the new Alison Krauss and Union Station album. It could be Ringo's album, Americana. Ringo's British, yeah, but it's cut from the American traditional American cloth.
Mhm. Yep, it's kind of a catch-all term, you know, a lot of categories or subcategories under that. I mean, that's for sure.
Mm.
Um, Ken, you were when I was talking about Americana, you were kind of wanted to say something I could tell. So what do you think? What do you think
Well,
about
that was the word I was going to use because,
Mhm.
well, like we just said, it has a broad definition these days. But when I listen to Look Up, it has a very contemporary sound. Um, I wouldn't say that like a lot of country music today, it's super slick and super polished, but it is very clean and very detailed. And if you listen, especially through your headphones, you're going to hear every instrument very well, you know. And that's part of the joy in listening to this. But does it have a traditional country sound? Some of it, especially if you hear the pedal steel guitar. When I listen to Time on My Hands, that's a traditional country song to me. Okay, much of the rest of the album is not. And a lot of what you call Americana could fit into a rock song, like Rosetta to me sounds like a rock song. So it has a, you know, it's a broad term, Americana, but it's not at all like Bukuza Blues. Bukuza Blues had a very focused sound, and it did sound like 60s or 70s country music of that time. And it was well produced for that album. But this one is definitely, you know, very, very fresh sounding, very new, and you know, even though Ringo has sprinkled country songs throughout his albums through the years, this is the first time he's done a full album since Buku's of Blues. And you were just talking, Darren, this Ringo has said that this was nothing planned. You know, most of the things he does in his career is not planned. Making an EP with Linda Perry was not planned, you know, and it just so happens that he ran into T-Bone Burnett and he had a song for him, and that resulted in 9 other songs that he had ready for him. So I'm grateful, number one, that he's doing a country or whatever you want to call this. It is a country album to me, but I'm even happier that it's an album and not just 4 songs. So in fact, I heard him talk about what he'd like to do for his next album, and he used the word album.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that gets me even more excited.
Oh, really?
So
Good. Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, that's great. Now,
yeah.
Joe, you are a big fan of the album. Those
Huge,
who've
huge.
watched it, yeah, those who have watched Joe's channel know this. He is a big proponent. So Joe, what is your take on all this? Do you think, you know, I'm sure you've seen all the chatter. Maybe you've had comments on some of your videos saying, "Well, this really isn't, you know, this
Sure.
isn't country." You know, what is your take on this?
Well, for the first thing, for me, I mean, I usually don't get too bogged down personally in like genre labels or, what is this like Americana? Is it country? Is it old school country, new country? What's progressive? What's heavy metal, rockabilly? I mean, I don't mind general terms, so I get a handle on, okay, I sort of know what I'm in for. But I was saying, I know I have a friend who said, this is a country album for people who don't like country albums. And I know kind of what he's getting at. I say that sometimes with horror movies. There's horror movies, and then there are ones like the Twilight series that are the romantic vampire stories, or people who don't really like horror movies. Um, but anyway, yeah, I love the album, and to me, there's enough country here for me to comfortably call it a country album. Bukus of Blues is one of the very few albums of all the solo catalog by any of the Beatles that I don't know as well as I should. I mean, I've played it a few times, but not in long intervals go by where I don't hear it. I personally, there's reason for that. I mean, I think, although I appreciate it, there's some songs I really enjoy on Bukus of Blues. I much prefer Look Up. If they're, not that you can compare the two, they are different. It's already been covered. It is more modern sounding, cleaner. It's not the Now I'm doing labels. It's not the old school classic, hardcore early country stuff. But so yeah, something like Time on My Hands. I mean, that's very country, I think, and I think maybe Come Back has as one of the more country flavored songs. Something like the title track, Look Up, more rock, pop,
Hmm.
something like that. Um, yeah, it varies. It varies. I'm comfortable still saying for Ringo, I can at least call it a Ringo country album.
Mhm.
I'm happy being able to make that distinction.
Yep.
To at least say that Ringo did a country album again, because people have been saying this for decades, and I just wanted to get that in. That you know, we used to say, a lot of us, Ringo, do a country album, and I thought I want him to have some kind of success and appreciation later in his life, which he doesn't get enough.
Hmm.
And this may have done it. This is what I dreamt of for him, because I saw an update of his a video where he did acknowledge that, and he said, the success of this album, it does my heart good, or something, words to that effect. That so he lived to realize it, and the album did do well on some of the charts, not the big ones we want, but by what I have, it did go number one on three charts. Small thing, like Amazon sales at one point, it was number one on Amazon's physical sales,
Right.
which is not bad. Number one, I think, UK country
Mhm.
chart, and number one UK Americana. Like, I guess genres come in handy in that regard. But yeah, what can I say? Yeah, call it what you want. I'll lastly say this, and Kit's heard me use this before on other shows, but like, if I said to you, you know what, I've scored a copy here early of Ringo's newest album that's going to be coming out. No title, no cover, no genre, just the new Ringo album. What do you think? I bet you the same people that say this ain't country enough would like it, and they might say, you know what, I like these songs, and even better, they've even got a little country tinge to them.
Mm.
Some of them,
Mhm.
but it's expectations, right?
Yep.
Right.
What do
Yep.
you expect?
Yeah, expectations is a good way to put it, because at first I have to admit I was kind of surprised by the album, because I thought it might be Bucko Blues Part Two.
Right.
I thought maybe it was going to be way more of a traditional country sound, and at first I thought, oh, I'm kind of disappointed. But the more I've listened to the album, I've grown to really appreciate it, and I think, Ken, you mentioned about listening, very closely. And definitely you want to do that, because there are elements in different songs that you think, oh, this is more traditional. Oh, this is like outlaw. Oh, this is, like 40s or 50s. This is here's a piano out of a saloon here. I mean, it's really fascinating to hear that. Before we get into some individual songs, let's talk a bit, because we talked about, Ken, you talked about how the album came about. Lot of different, obviously, musicians on this project, and a lot of different guests, but not quite who you'd expect. You'd think, oh, maybe Willie Nelson is going to appear on this, or Dolly
Yeah.
Parton. No, no, but Alison Krauss does, of course. I wondered if we want to go around to talk about, were there particular standout guests, whether they were singing with him or playing instruments, it doesn't have to be a singer, that really stood out to you, that you thought, wow, this person really added something,
Right.
to the album. So, Ken, you want to kick it
Oh,
off?
sure. One of the things I like to bring up, and this not only applied to this album, but when I got to see Ringo in concert in Nashville to do shows 2 nights in a row, but Molly Tuttle, I love her voice, and most of all, I love how much her voice blends with Ringo's. And if you go through his solo career, every now and then he will sing a song with a female. Like "Don't Hang Up" with Chrissie Hynde, something like that. There's one song on Buku's of Blues which has a female singer on there, but the name of the song escapes me. But Joss Stone or something like that. But it works really well with Ringo. I like the sound of two voices harmonizing together, and it adds a little more touch to have Ringo with a female. I love that. And Billy Strings blows me away with all the lead guitar playing that he does. Um, Breathless is a great opening track, and I love his acoustic guitar playing, his lead guitar playing on acoustic guitar. That's a really good example of. I was saying the first time that I heard this album, it was in the car, and I couldn't really hear all the instrumentation like I could with the headphones on. And I was a little disappointed that I didn't hear Billy Strings playing. But in the headphones, oh, it's great. It's glorious. All the lead guitar playing that he does on this album is really done well. And I think he adds a lot to the album.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are the ones that really stand out. And yes, I love Alison Krauss. That's another example of Ringo with a female singing together. And the pedal steel guitar playing on this album is absolutely tremendous. It's a guy called Paul Franklin.
Yep.
And I know all these people were assembled by T-Bone. These are all friends of his, and many of them are kind of veterans already in the country field. They're not entirely new. And he referred to Paul Franklin as the best steel guitarist in the business. And when you saw some of these songs live and how great the steel guitar playing was, it just blows you away. And it sounds like the record, as perfect as the record. And I think they add so much. I love the sound of the steel guitar.
Yeah.
It really brings out the traditional country feel. And, I was kind of hoping, as much as I like the whole album, I needed a few more time on my hands
Mhm.
altogether. But whenever it was his time to come up with a steel guitar, any steel guitar playing, he delivered.
Yep.
You know,
I
um,
agree.
Yeah, those are the ones I would mention off the top of my
Hmm.
head. But I also
Okay.
would like to say, because he didn't play on the album, but it was nice to have um, the Billy Swan contribute
Yes.
a song in there with You Want Some, which has a really great honky tonk feel. And there's a piano player that Mike Rojas is his name. I love the touch that he brings on the piano on that particular song. But yeah, I was saying on another show, because we all know Billy Swan is famous for I Can Help, his number one hit of 1974, which for years I looked at as being just Billy Swan and his big hit record. And then years later, people said to me, doesn't that sound like Ringo to you? And then Ringo actually ended up recording the song when he
Right.
made the album with Chips Moman in Memphis that he took to court and made sure that it didn't come out. But would have been cool if he did I Can Help. That
Yeah.
would have brought something, a cover on this because he's usually so great at the cover versions that he has. That would have added something, I think, to look up. But those would be the standouts for me.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Darren, I know you've got very diverse tastes as I do in music. So what were there particular musicians that stood out for you as well? And some of them that may have been new to you. I'm not sure. Some were to me.
Before I answer that, just to back up, I thought I was the only one when I was 9 years old that thought I Can Help was a Ringo Starr song.
No,
Really,
number of people.
when I was a kid and it was on the charts, Ringo. It's not
It's
Ringo, it's
perfect for
Ringo
Ringo.
Swan.
Yep.
Okay. I think that at that time, I could be wrong about this. I used to get, I don't know if any of you remember Song Hits magazine.
I think I remember that.
It
Yeah.
was just song lyrics. I used to buy it in the 70s, and if Wings were on the cover, obviously that was and I think that's when I found out because it would say would have just lyrics. I Can Help, songwriter, performed by Billy Swan. And I'm like, shouldn't it be Ringo Starr? That was like when I realized. And one quick thing before I move on to the album, I mentioned earlier on about traditional sounding country and western, and that Katie Lang made a record. It was Owen Bradley was the producer, and Katie Lang did
Oh,
an album with Owen Bradley producing called Shadowland. That was a throwback to the vintage like Loretta Lynn and um, Tammy Wynette sound
Yes.
of the late 50s and 60s. That sound is what I think of when I hear Bukus of Blues, the Owen Bradley production.
Gotcha.
But anyway, as for a look up, I was familiar with all of the artists that played on the album. I'm particularly fond of the band Lucius. It's a little confusing because when you see Lucius, um, that's actually a band. It's four members, but it's the two female vocalists that get all of the attention. If I was one of the guys in the band, I'd be like, "Hey, how about me?" But Holly Lasig and Jess Wolfe are outstanding singers who I've seen live at WFUV, met them briefly, and they're such strong singers that Roger Waters brought him on tour to be his female vocalists, and they're on Roger's most recent studio album, and now here they are singing on Ringo's album, and it seems there's so many records that they're singing on. I would have liked to have heard them more than just, is it one song that Lucius is credited? I think.
They're on comeback.
Yeah, they're on comeback for
Yeah,
sure.
come back. I would
Yeah, I
like to have
guess.
heard more from them. They sort of got lost in the shuffle. Um, I love Alison Krauss. And in another lifetime, I'd love to take Alison Krauss out to dinner, but that's a story for another time. Um, she is incredible. She has a perfect voice. She's a brilliant fiddler, and people forget that because it's the voice that is really that lately most people recognize her for. I would love to have heard more from Allison than just the last song on the album, which kind of then leaves Billy Strings, and Ken hit the nail on the head with his description of Billy Strings. That's not his real name, but you know why. His nickname is Billy Strings because the guy's just a whiz, I think, on most stringed instruments.
Hmm.
And his latest record is something that WFUV's playing a bit of now. Um, Larkin Poe, I always thought was um, more edgier, more rock leaning, but clearly, like we were saying, what are genres? What's rock? What's country? But Molly Tuttle, like maybe he's the one artist I was the least familiar with. Um, and I know that Ken pointed out how strong of a singer she is. I need to explore her a bit more. I know she's dabbled in bluegrass and whatnot in the past, but it's a testament to the skills of T-Bone Burnett
Hmm.
to put this cast together. They weren't all household names. They were big names. He wasn't looking for the star attraction to draw people into the album. He was looking for the right people to bring the right thing to the table. And I have always said, and Ringo probably would be the first person to agree with me, Ringo needs a collaborator to work with. Ringo can't sit down like Paul and John or, and pump out songs like it were a factory, write songs on his own. But Ringo always works well with a producer who knows how to bring out the best in the artist that he's producing. And Richard Perry did that
Yep.
for a short period of time, but Richard Perry was there with Ringo and Goodnight Vienna. Mark Hudson did that. I know when Mark Hudson and Ringo parted ways, there was some who felt that the Mark Hudson touch was becoming a little too much on every Ringo record. It was becoming a bit gimmicky to some.
Hmm.
But I tell you, I miss what Mark brought to the table. Now it's like you don't appreciate something when you don't have it anymore. And
Right.
Mark Hudson was the ideal collaborator for Ringo. Maybe they went as far as they could go together. And now we see what T-Bone Burnett could do with Ringo. T-Bone Burnett, a fan, a Beatle fan, and knows Ringo's strengths and weaknesses. And with this material, the strength is the voice. So let's, write songs within a certain range, certain topic, bring in a certain group of people, mostly all of them on the young side. So it gives you the contemporary feel. And it was just like a perfect or close to perfect marriage. And the result is an album that I just wish more people would hear. I mean, I was disappointed with its showing on Billboard's uh, album chart, the top 200. I know, as Joe pointed out,
Yeah.
he had all the number ones in the smaller categories, which is great.
Hmm.
I really did think that Look Up was going to show up higher,
Me
even if it
too.
were for 1 week of the overall chart. Instead, it is one of, unfortunately, the lowest charting albums in Ringo's career. If you look and compare, there aren't all that many. Some didn't chart, some, and a handful did worse than 147, but not many. Because this is a record really that if you, there's people, oh, I hate country music. Don't not listen to this for that reason, because T-Bone Burnett the man's a genius, and really brought this great cast of people together. And Ken pointed out some of the ones that don't get their name mentioned on the back cover, like Paul Franklin. Daniel Tashin is sort of a guy that I couldn't tell you off the top of my head his accomplishments, but I know that I've seen Daniel Tashin's name all the time on album credits as a producer songwriter. He was sort of T-Bone Burnett's right hand man here. And even a guy like who actually I thought he contributed more to the album, but it just says he did string arrangements on one song. David Mansfield is another guy that I've seen his name a lot over time. And when I heard he was involved, I thought, okay. But it turns out he's just involved with one track. But um, yeah, it was a perfect marriage. Also, you got the young people and the old timer together. When done right, that's always a great combination.
Yeah.
And the way the shows in Nashville sounded like how they went, because Ken was there and shared with us some things we said today. They were musicians working with Ringo who were genuine fans and were influenced
Mhm.
by what Ringo and what the Beatles were all about.
Right.
Absolutely. And I think that's a very key thing. I think T-Bone Burnett, and good point you made, Darren, about the material. He didn't write all of it, but most of it. And it certainly suited his range very well. Ringo's, his personality. And as you said, directing this whole project, getting this cast together to really support Ringo and showcase him was brilliant. Absolutely. Joe, what were there
Can
particular
I add
people that
anything
stood
to
out?
all of that? Not really. That's a lot of stuff. No, but I would say, for me, I'd never heard of any of the people on this except for Alison Krauss,
Mhm,
and I'm glad I've heard of the others. Most notably, Molly Tuttle, who was my first. I mean, I was just blown away by her voice. Made me want to think about seeking out other music by her. I love the way she sings with Ringo, harmonies. You want to say a duet on "Can You Hear Me Call?" I mean, I just love the blend of the two of them together. It's a beautiful thing. Billy Strings, ditto to everything that's been said. Plus, him singing along
mhm.
with Ringo as well. I love the way on Breathless. I love the way his voice is going on with it with Ringo's, and also Never Let Me Go. I love that whole bit. I think that's an underrated song on here, which maybe I'll get to
Yeah, we'll
later
get to that.
on.
Mhm.
You know, let me see. Alison Krauss. I remember when I first heard "Thankful" when it first dropped. I thought maybe I was wanting her to be a little up in the mix a little more.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
You
Yes,
know, other
for
than
sure.
but I
No,
mean,
because in a way, Joe, it sounds like it could have been Molly Tuttle, unless you
Mhm.
knew and had in front of you. Oh, it's with
right,
Allison.
Exactly.
right. And I mean, I never heard of Larkin Poe and Lucius, and then together. I mean, it's just magic. But this leads me into saying this is a good opportunity to put this in. I think that Ringo, as always, right, gets a little or a lot of help from his friends. But on this, that doesn't take away from Ringo. Ringo's not any slouch in this. Like it's
Oh
not
no.
just like, well, it's all everybody else. Ringo seems to be having fun. He sings well, and his drumming to me is really standout on here. I
Yeah.
noticed it right away on Breathless, which is a great opening track. I
Hmm.
love the way it just comes, crashing in there. And I love his drumming on just about everything. Particularly, I'm going back to Never Let Me Go. You know, a lot of people have told me, "Oh, geez, that's all they say." I think Beatley Tone said he sings that. He says that 28 times, and I'm like, "Listen, that's that's the chorus." But there are a lot of other lines in there, and I'm going to make everybody cover their ears while I sing a line that I love. I don't know why certain lines hit you. You really do. Look at it; they're doing it. We will make what's tangled come unwound. Yeah, well, you know, people say, "Oh, lyrics," which they're not great lyrics. There's nothing profound here. Well, it doesn't have to be if you're enjoying it. This is just a lot of fun, and that's what I get out of it. But yet, I do like that lyric, for example, and I like a lyric in "Breathless" when Ringo says, "I'm beguiled," which you never really hear. You know, that's different. So for an album that admittedly is not exactly going to be Bob Dylan poetry or anything, uh, there's a couple of lines that impressed me.
Yep,
The words.
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And yeah, I agree with you, piggybacking on what Joe said. I mean, I had never heard personally never heard of Molly Shuttle before this, and I'm definitely going to look into her catalog because, as you said,
Excuse me.
beautiful
When I meant
voice.
before I lose it, uh, when I said "Never Let Me Go," I brought that up. I started to go into the chorus and everything.
Mhm.
I like Ringo's drumming on there. I just like his
Oh,
style
yes.
doing on that track. Those are two standouts for me. Breathless with the drums, I mean,
Yeah.
and Never Let Me Go, and
Mhm.
everything in between.
Yep. Yeah. It's everything. Yep, absolutely. And Larkin Poe I had heard of, but didn't know. And they're actually, I think, a band.
Yeah,
It's doing,
it's
yeah,
a duo. Yeah,
yeah, and
sisters,
sisters, I
sisters,
think.
I think. Yeah,
And I'd heard the name, but wasn't familiar with them. And again, going to look into them. I think they had great chemistry with Ringo and Lucius. I had never heard of Lucius, so you're one up on me, Darren. I'd never heard of them, but I'm glad I did through this because
yeah.
I'm
They
going
have
to
a
look
new
at them.
album coming out, I think in April or May.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I bet you can't guess what it's going to be called. Lucius.
Lucius. Oh, okay.
I
Uh,
think it's their fourth album or something, but yeah, they're pretty outstanding. And
Yep. Mhm.
yeah, I said
Yeah.
hello to them backstage at a WFUV concert one time. I don't think they heard me.
Oh.
They kind of walked past me. I was like, 'cause every once in a while, it could be, doesn't matter how many decades you do something. You get sometimes get a little starstruck and get kind of goofy when you meet.
Yeah.
You know, oh, hi, play your records on the radio. They walked by me, they ignored me.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, so
Yep. So yeah, so I love that. I also liked on and we're going to get to the songs in 1 second here, but I loved Colin Lundell on the resonator guitar. I think it was on Come Back. I thought that was a beautiful, beautiful part that he played. And of course, as everybody has mentioned, the pedal steel from Paul Franklin. I mean, I think other than Ringo, obviously, he was the MVP for this album, as far as I'm concerned. He just lent so much emotion in his playing to so many of these songs and really kept it grounded in that country sound. So I those are the standouts for me. So let's dive into the songs. Well, why don't we each mention a few songs that we thought were standouts? And Joe, you kind of started doing that, so why don't you continue with that? And
all
why were
right.
they standouts?
Well, I'll say from the start here that this is an album that I enjoyed every song on first listen.
Mhm.
Now, well, when Thankful came out as a just the second single dropped, I was a little underwhelmed at the time. It was only my first listen. It sounded to me like it was more like the stuff we've been hearing on Ringo's EPs. But the fact that it's last on the album, I think it's Bruce Sugar and Ringo together,
Right.
Yes.
right? That wrote that. That makes sense that it kind of sounded a little like the other stuff, but it works perfectly, in my opinion, even better as the last track. And I like it a lot more now. It fits perfectly. I think sequencing can be really important at times. Even it benefits a song sometimes where it is on an album. and I really have come to like that. But so I like every song on here from the first listen, and I always feel I have to say this because we know how great Paul McCartney is, but not every Paul album hit me this hard on first listen. It took me 2 or 3 listens, and I start getting the hooks, and it starts getting familiar. But yeah, so Breathless, like I said, great opener. The title track, Look Up, I love it. I love Molly Tuttle singing with Ringo. No surprise because I'm a commercial guy. I like commercial stuff, and I think it should have been the first single. I think the reason though it wasn't, I was telling Kit this on another show, I think, is that they probably wanted to push the country uh, vibe aspect of this. So that's why they
Mhm.
went with Time on My Hands, which I love. I love Time on My Hands. It's really touching, tells a story. Ringo has a lot of emotion and feeling in it. It's great. Uh, I haven't named the whole album. All right, so Can You Hear Me Call? I mentioned that before. I think that's one of the best tracks on here with Molly Tuttle and Ringo together, going off each other.
Mhm.
Perfect. Rosetta, really intense, almost the closest to rock, maybe. Harder rock, maybe, with Larkin Poe, Billy Strings. And You Want Some is just fun, a fun kind of like little thing, as if something you might expect, like Ringo Country-ish, maybe like I don't know, Sunshine Life for Me, or something like just fun like that. You know, and that's the main track. I like all the other tracks too. I mentioned "Will Never Let Me Go" already, which I think is the
Yes.
underdog here. I really
Mhm.
like that song a lot.
Mhm. Yep. Very good. All right. Ken, how about you? What were some standout tracks for you?
Well, ironically, when Ringo did his concerts at the Ryman, he did 3 songs, and those 3 songs are the ones that I would have picked.
Oh, wow.
Because I really think, well, Time on My Hands I honestly feel that if he was to tour again with the All Stars, if he was, and I hope he does something from this new album. If he only picked one song, Time on My Hands to me should be a classic. Everything about the recording, the delivery, Ringo's vocals, the pedal steel is perfect. Okay, I think it's a standout track overall. Um, it should be considered one of his classic recordings. I also love Look Up, the title track. I think it has very good commercial appeal. Excellent vocals from Ringo. I like Molly Tuttle's harmonizing on it. It's one of those songs that takes a couple of listens and you are hooked on it. And I do like Thankful Enough. I think it is a strong song to end the album too. And I love Alison Krauss's vocals on there. And I like the sentiment without going overboard with peace and love, just being grateful for the things he has in life. So I like those songs a lot. It took about 3 or 4 times before I really started to like this album. Songs had to grow on me. Although Breathless is a great opening track. I love Ringo's vocal delivery on it. I love the drumming, which is right in your face on the song, and I love Billy String's acoustic guitar playing on it. Um, and what Joe said is true. The drumming is phenomenal here. It isn't just the playing, the way that it's mixed. It's very crisp. You can hear every single fill. One of the songs, Rosetta, it starts off with drum rolls in the very beginning, and it sounds great. If you really want to zero in on the sound of Ringo's drums, this is a great album to do it with. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, I like I Live for Your Love a lot because that's another one with Molly Tuttle. Great harmonies with Ringo on there. I like the acoustic playing of the lead guitar playing, the pedal steel from Paul Franklin on there. There's a mandolin on there. Great balance between Ringo and Molly Tuttle's vocals. I like Rosetta a lot, and Joe Walsh is actually on that track too, along with Billy Strings. Joe Walsh does the slide guitar on there. You Want Some is like Joe was saying, a good fun track written by Billy Swan, and like I said before, a honky tonk piano playing on there. Um, String Theory is a pretty unusual song to me, and Molly Tuttle's on that one too, and Larkin Poe. Those are the ones that, well, it's almost the entire album. After you've listened several times, you start to like all of them. I think every song is good at the very least. It goes from good to very good to great. Time on My Hands is probably what I would rate the highest.
Hey,
right
wow.
now.
So, yep. Wow. So, Time on My Hands is getting a lot of love here.
Yeah.
Darren,
I enjoy,
what were you?
I enjoy the inner groove of side one of the album, being a clown.
Mhm.
Um, album, boom, 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 boom. The first four tracks, I love them. Breathless, Look Up, Time on My Hands, Never Let Me Go. And then later on in the album, You Want Some, um, which sort of has that. I don't know. I'm putting some notes here that I wrote down. I can help. It just a little bit of something about You Want Some reminded me of that type of song. And then I look, and there it was. It was written by Billy Swan.
Yeah.
And the final song on the album really hit me the last time I listened. I was thought it was a nice song, Thankful. Last time I listened to it, which was earlier this week, it really hit me as such a great song that would be a really cool thing for Ringo to perform in his All-Star Band concerts towards the end of a show.
Hmm.
Um, but I know that's where it's backloaded with all the classic Beatles songs and whatnot. Um, to me, there really isn't a dud on this album. The only one I thought was a little lagged a little was "I Live for Your Love." Um, but I mean, that's being nitpicky, and trying to find what sunk to the bottom. But for me, Breathless, Look Up, Time on My Hands, Never Let Me Go, those first four, and then You Want Some and Thankful for probably my key tracks. And of course, probably as is the case with all of us, do this show in a month and we might pick different ones.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's a good point. What we're what's hitting us now. Yeah, for me, it was really track 6 through 9 that hit
That's
me the
interesting.
most. I mean, he was just on a roll. Come Back, I absolutely love because Ringo has talked about. I was talking about this with Joe on another show that um, you know Ringo's talked about in interviews how influenced he was by the old, cowboy kind of movies, the Gene Autry and Roy Rogers and all that. And I can absolutely picture this song in one of those films. I mean, I could picture Ringo on a horse with his cowboy hat, with the spurs and singing. And I love, just love this song. It's so charming. It's such a throwback. And Lucius just adds so much to this with those backing vocals. I love that. Again, it's just to me it's like a out of a western, an old, like as I said, Roy Rogers kind of western, and I just thought it was absolutely charming. Um I love, and as I said, the solo of the resonator guitar, great part. Can You Hear Me, as Joe mentioned, great chemistry with Ringo and Molly Tuttle. I thought they sounded fantastic together. If they did a duets album, I'd buy
Oh, man.
it.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, they just real. I love the acoustic guitar work as well on there by T-Bone Burnett, and I think Molly Tuttle was playing on this as well. Um, I love the work on that. Um, as as the kids say, Rosetta is a banger. I love Rosetta. That's a banger. That's a bop, whatever you want to call it. And yes, it's more on the rock side, but but it's still grounded in country. I mean, with
Mm.
Billy Strings and Larkin Poe. I mean, I think Larkin Poe, really added something to this. I love the, little bit of a, I don't know, it gives them more of like an outlaw kind of feel. It's with having a little bit bluesier, a little bit more of as I said, a rock edge. So maybe more modern country, you could argue, but it works. I really enjoyed this. And finally, as Darren, you just said, you want some, and it's so funny when you said it kind of reminded you of I Can Help. Yeah, same thing. Because I thought, boy, this kind of, this sounds a little familiar. And yep, as you said,
yeah,
Billy Swan wrote it.
this one.
Yep, Billy Swan. Love the piano, as I said, like kind of a saloon kind of piano. Love the slide guitar. You know, and Ringo just sounds like he's having so much fun. I mean, he sounds like he's having fun on so many tracks on this album, but this one in particular, he sounds like he's really having a great time. You know, even doing a little, you know, a little bit of almost scat, you know, at one point. I mean, just you know, not jazz scat, but you know what I mean. And it just was a joy to listen to. And Ringo's drumming, you guys have touched on this. You know, Ringo's drumming throughout is just solid. I
Yeah.
mean, it
Yep.
really is. And those tracks in particular, I mean, not so much Come Back, but the other tracks are just, you know, I mean, just the man's 85.
Yeah, I was
84.
thinking that.
I mean, that's what I kept saying to myself. He's 85. I
Yeah.
mean,
84. Don't push him.
oh, 84. Oh, he's turning 85 this
Well,
year.
84 and change.
In change, yes. So almost 85, yes, but 84 right now. But just phenomenal. Just phenomenal. All right, we've touched a little bit on it, but Darren, you kind of mentioned this a minute ago. Were there some elements of the album that you weren't as, you know, as thrilled with, or you thought were a little, you know, weaker, or something that you would have changed? You know, what do you
I
think?
don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
Off the top of my head, no, I really can't think of anything. I really can't think of anything that I would say didn't work. I mean, that one song I pointed out, I
Yeah.
Live for Your Love, I'm in my notes here on the dull side, but even that, again, uh, it's a good song, and it's not worth, you know, singling it out as a weak point or anything like that.
Right.
I could very easily hear someone else say, "Oh, I love that one."
Mhm.
So no, I don't really. I mean, you know, I don't know if I would put Look up there with Ringo and Goodnight Vienna, possibly because those albums also, I always feel like the albums that came out in our youth, um, have there's something that's attached to your heart, the older records like that. So to say that Look Up is of that stature, I would hold off on that. I would back off that. I would say it's definitely an album that I would say is amongst Ringo's 5 best in his solo career. Um, and you know, I would have to really nitpick and really study every nuance to come up with something. Oh, well, I don't really like the way. All right, here's one. I just thought of one, and Joe brought it up. You know, Joe Alison Krauss is being could have been brought up a little bit more in the mix, because if you're not paying attention, you just hear a female voice. Um, yeah, all right, so that's like the best I could do with something that,
Mhm.
you know, I might change. And I'm glad you guys have mentioned the drumming because, and there's another fine job by T-Bone Burnett. T-Bone Burnett has the drums up front without them intruding. They don't intrude on anything on the album, but
Right.
you hear Ringo's playing, and you could appreciate that it seems like Ringo has kicked it up a notch on a lot of the songs on this album. Um, whether it be he was more enthused, whether maybe he was recording his bits. I'm assuming, I don't know how many times T-Bone and Ringo were in the studio together. I'm thinking that it wasn't that many because Ringo often talks about sharing files.
Yeah.
Mhm.
As possible, maybe T-Bone is suggesting to Ringo a different something to add to the rhythm. But the way he handles the drumming allows us to listen and hear this 84-year-old guy playing like he's 44.
Yep.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ken, any areas that you thought, you know, maybe
Not
that could have.
really.
Mhm.
The more I listen to this album, the more I appreciate it. But I wanted to add one more comment here, which is, for me personally, the fascinating thing about listening to Ringo's albums as the years go on is whenever he's working with someone that he hasn't worked with before. And, you know, he's had a history of working with his pals throughout many of his solo albums. And then he moved into the Mark Hudson period, and that was a band of its own with the Roundheads and everything. And after Mark Hudson, he started to work with people that he hadn't worked with before, and Dave Stewart here, and Richard Marx here, and a country songwriter like Gary Burr, who was in the Roundheads, or Gary Nicholson, also a country songwriter. And to me, I see growth there. It's certainly in the songwriting aspect. And here, you take this album, and with the exception of Joe Walsh on Rosetta, everybody on this album is someone he hasn't worked with before.
Right.
And I think that creates a level of excitement, and it brings out something more in Ringo that he normally would give.
Yep.
You know, so I think that when you're out of your comfort zone to some degree, even though he's comfortable doing country music, it creates, you know, maybe for you to be much more, I don't want to say innovative, but certainly more creative in what you're doing. And there's so many more fills that you hear on here, and it adds so much to these songs. So, and I also kind of frown on, and I know I've said this to Joe many times, there are
Oh, we're
certain,
gonna go at it. Go ahead.
no, 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 no. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people who will listen to an album once, and aside from Joe, I just want to tell you, there's a
Not up,
friend.
not up to you.
No, no, no. Wait a second. Wait a minute. Let me have my say. Okay. There's a friend of mine who, in the past, was the biggest George Harrison fan I knew. When Brainwash came out, he listened to it once. Oh, Ken, it's better than Cloud Nine. Well, I said, calm down a while. Give it a listen. It is a great album, but to judge an album that quickly, I just don't. I don't hold much value to that. You have to give an album some time to breathe. With every single album, certainly albums that I've listened to, there are a few songs that hit you the first time you hear it, and then it takes a while for you for the other songs to grow on you. So when you really get to know the album after a while, I would prefer an opinion like that from people who have listened for quite a while to an album before they're really familiar with it. So as I'm listening to this album even more, I'm certainly liking it even more than I did the first few times around. So that's all I wanted to say. I think as you listen to this album, you'll appreciate all that all the musicians bring to it. And Ringo's drumming, his vocals sound great, and like you all said, he sounds like he's having fun. And it's probably been a bit of a challenge for him to work with people he's not familiar with. And for that reason, I think it also sounds fresh, very
Mhm.
fresh.
Yep. I agree. I think so. And, and just for before you get to you, Joe, to respond, I just wanted to say that, yeah, it's interesting how sometimes albums, I mean, the first time you listen to them, you just, instantly respond to it and say, oh my God, I love this. This just absolutely grabs me. And this album was kind of a grower for me. It didn't hit me that hard that fast. And so it's just interesting how, it changes, different tastes, different reactions. It's really, it's kind of fascinating. So, okay, Joe, so first of all, respond to that. And also, were there any, it's probably a dumb question, but were there any weak areas that you found on this album?
Well, I'll do that first because there was,
Mhm.
I gotta say, as much as I love this album, there was a major weakness about it, though, I have to say.
Mhm.
And that's that there are only 11 tracks on here.
I knew you were going to say that.
Oh, you knew
I
that?
knew it.
Yeah, I wish there were a lot more. Listen, listen. This is hard to hold back, but I'll keep it cool. No, the
Mhm.
thing is, I would have thought that Ken, of all people, would love that I raved about this album right out of the gate and said, well, we'll give it a few more listens first. Maybe you won't like it as much, I guess. I know I'm a little mixed up. But I do what I want to do, and I feel what I want to feel. And I saw there's been other times I've seen, hey, Facebook, a blessing and a curse too, right? I've seen dialogue with people before where it was like I can understand if somebody listens to an album and they don't like it much at first. I'm more inclined to say, well, come on, give it another couple of listens or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like this immediately and it only got better. I probably think I played it, no exaggerate, at least 15 times by now. It's been in my car a lot. And
Wow.
I have heard everything in the car, for me,
Sure.
my system. I heard all the Billy Strings things and everything else, and it's very, very well recorded and produced, etc., etc. But I remember because we were talking, I think off the air, and I had said I'm already ready as of today, as of this year, right now, to put it in my top probably 3 Ringo albums of all his 21 albums. Okay.
We'll get to that in a second, but yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. So want me to save that because like, will it change? Yeah. So what? We all know. At least I do this. I've made videos where we do like let's every year or two like rank Paul's albums, right? And I find, well, gee, this album went up a notch, or this album went down a notch.
Yep.
That happens. But I know back in 1992, Time Takes Time was my #2 Ringo album of all time. And we are 33 years later, and it stayed right there.
Yeah.
It hasn't gone down. But I also got to say this one thing that I made a video on it because it kind of got me so much. Like when I said about Hackney Diamonds, the Rolling Stones album, how much I love that right out of the gate. That never happens either with Rolling Stones. I like the Stones, but I don't love albums so much right off the bat. So this for me might be one of their best albums. Oh, we can't have that. It's got to be Beggar's Banquet or Sticky Fingers, or it's got to be whatever it is. Some Girls or Let It Bleed. Got to be that, right? Like Darren was saying, yet we have our heart and what we grew up in. Surely Ringo's album has to be the self-titled Ringo album, #1. I put it there. I put it there. The Ringo album is #1. I don't know how much of it's because of my childhood and, loyalty. I don't think I love, maybe there's 1 or 2 tracks I don't love as much as these, but it's got Photograph on it. It's got I'm the Greatest on it, and it's got all that stuff, so.
Yep.
I'm elaborating here instead of later,
Mhm.
but we can do a little more of that if
Yeah.
you want.
Yeah, because that was going to be Ken, did you want to
Yeah,
say something?
I want you to know, Joe, that I'm thrilled that you love Look Up.
Oh
Don't
my
get
God,
me
you would
wrong.
be.
But when people right out of the gate say it's his best album since Ringo, like some people
That's
will
their
say that.
feeling, and they're entitled to it.
But at the same time, that's also dismissing his other work right off the bat.
Oh,
I mean,
I don't know about
No, I don't
that.
think so.
wait a second.
No.
I mean, if you take the albums, like I've always praised the Mark Hudson albums and Time Takes Time, amongst us, we think highly of them. But the general public don't really know those albums that well. Okay, so those albums should get attention too.
Well, of course.
I
So
like this one better than all the Mark Hudson albums, personally.
Mhm.
okay, but I
Yeah.
just think sometimes when you make a decision that quickly with some people, then you're also dismissing the other works. That's all that I'm saying here. There's like my friend said about Brainwashed, and we all have a different opinion of Brainwash, but to automatically say it's better than Cloud Nine after one listen, to me was really kind of ridiculous.
He must have really liked it better than Cloud 9. I don't
Yeah.
know.
For one listen,
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with
Was
that.
that Owen Ring? Who said that?
makes better sense to wait a while before you say anything more definitive.
Well, then you're going to hate this next question
That's your
because and yes, with the understanding that obviously it's of this recording, this year, this time,
Yeah.
Now I'm not expecting you to give like a totally, hard and fast ranking here, but I thought to close out this, we talk about how this album fits in with Ringo's overall catalog. And, where do you think this, now when I say this ranks, I'm not saying you have to have an exact number, it could be upper tier, middle tier, lower tier, if that's something you're more comfortable with. But just placing this album within, Ringo's pretty vast catalog here. I
Yes.
mean, really. So let's see. Well, Joe, let's start with you because you've kind of started already. So why don't we?
Yeah.
So what? So you said #3, right?
Well, I just know, what I like as of early 2025, right? I'm trying to be fair and say that, there was a time when I thought this is a good example what Ken's talking about. I really liked What's My Name at
Yeah.
the time. I played that again after this. I used to have that like around 3 or 4. I liked it that much. I didn't like love the title track so much, and I didn't love the Money version so much. Whereas right here, I like all the songs on this one already. I put that down a little bit now. That's changed for me a little bit. And this may go down a little bit. I don't know, higher.
Okay.
Who knows? Who knows? But I when I'm ranking Ringo's albums, I feel like, yeah, I think the self-titled albums. I mean, it's a classic. It's one of the best solo albums. Period. Not just Ringo, I would say, but for any of the solo albums, it's one of the high ones. But you see, it almost seems like obligation on him saying it's number one. But I think I still feel that anyway. And Time Takes Time, I put number two, as I say. I thought that was such a great album, and still do. It hasn't gone down at all for me. Yeah, this one is probably for me the third. I'm also thinking in terms of uh, the way I love all the tracks. I love all the tracks. I mean, am I supposed to put Goodnight Vienna next or after Ringo because it's 74 and he's got No Song and Snookeroo on there? I don't know about and Only You. I mean, I don't know. And it's vintage Ringo and it's earlier Ringo and 70s Ringo. Well, early 70s Ringo. Should I put? I love Bad Boy. I love Bad Boy. I love Stop and Smell the Roses. I love Why Not. I love Vertical Man. And so on. But anyway, but yeah, right now I like this that much. Everything we've said, the musicians, the aspect of fun, every song flowing into each other well, and I'm enjoying every song.
Yep.
Everything about it is
Mm.
just a fun, joyful 30 minutes, 35, 6 minutes, something like that. It's pretty short.
Short.
And for me to say, well, like what I get what Darren was saying too, because we all do that. I feel that too. When you have something so dear to your heart,
Right.
how in the world can you say this thing that just came out in 2025 is anywhere near something as much of a gem as 73 for Ringo or something like that? That's just I think a mentality a mental block. I don't mean that in a negative way to anybody. That we all, myself, oftentimes too, have. It kind of gets in the way for making no Stones fanatic will ever say that. I've talked to a lot of Stones experts, who will not put Hackney Diamonds like in the top three or anything. I mean, they think it's fantastic. They love the album, but you can't put that with the 60s stuff. You can't do it, or Some Girls, or I do.
Yep, absolutely. Darren, where would you rank this? And again, it doesn't have to be an exact number if you don't want,
No,
but kind of
no,
upper
okay.
tier, lower tier, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, well, a lot of times when I try to do rankings like this, I end up making two lists: my personal top 5, my personal top 10, and what I think, in my opinion, is genuinely the best. And with Ringo, I think if I did that with Ringo, there would be many similarities. The only one that I have to add in, and I could understand if somebody wouldn't want to include it in the best of list, that is a personal favorite of mine, is I Want to Be Santa Claus.
Yeah.
All right, that's probably my most played Christmas album when the holidays roll around. And last time I counted CDs alone, I've got over 300 Christmas albums. Okay, Christmas needs to happen more than once a year for me to be able to go through everything that I own. And I just love it. It's perfect Ringo. It's his personality. Now, back to Look Up and where I would put it. I would, similar to Joe, I would probably, if I had to rank them all, the ones that really jump out at me are Ringo, Goodnight Vienna, Time Takes Time. I'd have Look Up 4. Because I sort of like Ringo Rama, Choose Love, and Vertical Man about equally, and almost, especially in the case of Ringo Rama and Choose Love, I tend to think of them as one album in a way. Like if I've played one, I then go to listen to the other. So to split them apart and say one of them goes into a list would really um, cause me great heartache and cause me to take nap and rest my brain a little bit and trying to split them up. And they sort of, in a way, when I'm trying to rank, I'll end up ultimately canceling themselves out. What are the unique Dynamite albums in Ringo's discography? I feel are Ringo and Goodnight Vienna and Time Takes Time, Look Up, and then Give Me Darts. You know what I mean? I'll throw them up against the dartboard for number 5. But I think Look Up is because I think it's a complete package. Everything about the album works. The songs are strong. Are they his best? Some of them are amongst his best, but maybe not the best body of work that Ringo's come up with. But the whole package is consistently good, and that helps it stand alone as a very strong album. And that's why I would put it up against Time Takes Time, which shouldn't be as good as it is because Ringo worked with so many different producers.
Yeah.
It should sound disjointed and all over the map, and it
Mm.
doesn't. And of course, I was praising Richard Perry, Mark Hudson, T-Bone Burnett as great collaborators for Ringo, great artists for Ringo to have on his side. I think it's a testament to what Richard Perry was able to cook up. Whatever magic dust he put into the sessions that made Ringo and Goodnight Vienna, I think will always be a couple of notches above the rest. Um, I hate saying this, but I don't like all of Ringo's albums. There are a few that make me cringe a little, and those tend to be Old Wave and Stop and Smell the
That's my
Roses
least favorite Ringo album.
Mhm.
and Ringo the Fourth.
Mhm.
But the guy will always put a smile on my face, regardless of which one of them, even one of the weaker ones I put on. I'll always smile. But so,
Cool.
like I said about 10 minutes ago, Look Up to me is amongst his 5 best.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Can I
and I
just
don't see that change.
Darren made me think of something I forgot to say. Thank you. The thing is, another thing about the new album that I like is it's different. It sounds fresh and different for
Yeah,
Ringo.
yeah,
Yeah.
Whereas the EPs, much as I like a bunch of tracks off them, were getting similar. And as
Mhm.
much as I thought it was such a great shot in the arm that Ringo needed with Mark Hudson at the time, to me that became samey. Very as a sameness to the album.
There was a Ringo. There was a gimmicky thing to what
Yes.
after a while that started to maybe wear a little thin, although we didn't say it. When
Mhm.
you came down to what would I mean, Liverpool 8 was sort of a transitional album where it was the end of the Mark Hudson, a little bit Dave Stewart,
Yeah.
a little bit Ringo starting to move on his own. So,
Right.
and to me, Liverpool 8 is disjointed because of that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Good songs doesn't stick together as well.
Yep. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Ken, what do you think?
I would rate this album somewhere between 6 and 10,
Mm-mm.
because the core top 5 for me are Ringo, Time Takes Time, Vertical Man, Ringo Rama, Choose Love. And I'm glad that Darren mentioned I Want to Be Santa Claus because that should be in the top 10 anyway.
Yeah.
And I understand what he was saying, and he's spot on about certain producers have a certain sound. And I'm sure that even if Richard Perry had continued working with Ringo, it would start to sound the same production-wise. Mark Hudson has his own sound. The gimmicky stuff, yeah, that kind of would get on my nerves, but what makes the Mark Hudson album so strong is that the songs are really strong songs and they
Yeah.
work well for Ringo. They're well constructed songs, they're performed very well. The band is cooking. I love the chemistry between Ringo and Steve Dudas and Mark Hudson, of course, and Gary Burr and those people. But the songs are more important to me overall than the production. And I do like Mark Hudson's production anyway. And I'm sure that Mark could have adapted a little bit and maybe steered away from being too Beatley if Ringo had asked him to. But you might think that Bruce Sugar's sound with Ringo is too similar. I don't think stylistically the music is similar on all the albums that Bruce Sugar has worked on with Ringo. but the production has a sameness to it. Okay?
Mhm.
So here the production sounds really different with T-Bone Burnett. It's a different sound altogether. But who knows? After 3, 4, 5 albums of T-Bone Burnett, you might say, come on, move on to somebody else.
Can I jump in right there? Because
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I have said this before. WFUV is always it just works out this way. There's so much that T-Bone Burnett has produced that FUV has played, and some of his solo records too. I mean, he was the first, I think he was the first musician I physically saw in the studios before. I mean, I was completely wet behind the ears. I don't even think I'd been on the air yet. And T-Bone had an album out, I believe it was Proof Through the Night, and he had come up for an interview. So there's a history there. So I'm very familiar with all of, not all, a lot of what T-Bone Burnett did. And that is exactly what I was starting to feel like, that the T-Bone Burnett productions were all starting to sound alike. He had a tendency, I always felt, where the drums sounded like they were underwater, or um they were like the way sometimes drums, they'll sometimes pack them with pillows
Yeah.
or to
Mm.
deaden the sound.
Right.
Everything seemed very dead.
Right.
And I started to hear that um, on Robert Plant's album Band of Joy.
Mhm.
Um, and then everything was starting to sound like that, and I was like, all right, I'm getting tired of this now. T-Bone, can you take, you know, and I was a little wondering what Look Up would sound like. And it sounded nothing like what I thought. I was starting to get a little tired of. The Oh Brother, Where Art Thou sound, which is T-Bone Burnett. Um, now, of course, there's a million that I could name, and I can't think of any of them now that I'm on the spot. But the Robert Plant album, Band of Joy, was one where I thought, all right, it's sounding more like Robert Plant is singing on T-Bone Burnett's album than T-Bone Burnett is producing the next Robert Plant album.
Mm.
Mhm.
Another one was, oh, it just popped into my head. I'm sorry. The Elton John Leon Russell album, The Union, was another one that T-Bone Burnett produced. And that too, and Elton John's The Captain and Me album, I believe. And it started to have that kind of like that T-Bone Burnett sound that was starting to become tiresome. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll shut up.
No, but it's important for a producer to evolve a little bit and grow.
Yes.
I know there's a lot of Beatle fans out there that don't care for Jeff Lynne because it seems like everything Jeff Lynne produces sounds the same. You know?
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
Well, you
Yeah,
mentioned
What
time.
did George
I
Harrison,
like them.
what did George Harrison say before he died? Please don't turn my album into an ELO album.
Yeah.
I think when he handed Brainwashed over to Jeff and Danny to finish it off,
Hmm.
it's not ELO, it's
No.
George Harrison.
Well, he helped save his career for my money, and
Yeah. Oh, he did.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
But
Absolutely.
all the artists that he was producing then with Tom Petty and the Traveling Wilburys, and it all had a certain sound to it.
I
Yeah.
mean, granted, the
Got
songs
tired.
were strong, right? The songs were strong as well
Yeah,
on Cloud Nine, but the production really added to it.
Mhm.
right. But that's how I would rank the Ringo albums. All the solo albums have worthwhile material on them, even the weakest of
Mhm.
Ringo's albums. So but look up, it's still too soon for me to really rank it. But I would place it in the lower half of the top 10. And he's
Mhm.
now had this is his 21st album
One
plus
studio, yeah.
Mhm.
so I think that's pretty good for a fairly new album.
Yep.
Rank it that high.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. As for me, I would say I might go agree with Darren here and say four, uh, possibly five. It's hard to say. It's as of now.
Hmm.
We may change our minds with his next
Yeah,
album, but
right.
I mean, to me, looking at them in terms of consistency, I mean, Ringo. I mean, you can't beat it. I mean, that is such a consistent album. Time Takes Time. Maybe, Goodnight Vienna, number three, as you said. So, um, but I do I mean, I liked his last CP, Crooked Boy. I mean, I would put that in top
See, and
10.
I
I wouldn't
didn't.
put it up, but,
Hmm.
because
I'm
I
one of the
liked
few
Linda
people.
Perry.
that didn't. I mean, I liked February Sky, and the other
Yes.
ones to me, and that was one that everybody, even people who didn't love his EPs, were saying, "Oh, this one's really good." But I
Mhm.
only mention this to show you, like, it's not just that it's Ringo, so I'm,
Right.
I love it. I was a little harder on Crooked Boy, the other
Yep.
tracks.
Yep, I know. And and What's My Name? I still like parts of What's My Name.
Oh,
So, but yes, it's gone down on the rank, the ranking of albums since this has come out and all. But I would definitely say, and I think we would all say that, if you're uh, certainly if you're introducing somebody to Ringo, this would be one of the maybe essential albums. It's one of his best. Wherever you
Mhm.
rank it, I mean, it's top 10 for sure.
Mhm.
And not to put down any of the others, but I think that's the point here, that we want you guys, if you haven't listened to it already, if you're not a big country fan, do not let that scare you. This is
Yeah.
not,
yeah,
this is not a hoedown, kind of thing, if that's what you don't like. I mean, this is a
yeah.
modern sound, but with classic country
Yeah.
touches. I mean, it's, let me make that clear. It's not bro country, It
And I
really
know
is.
somebody who doesn't like country really much at all, and loves the new album.
Yep,
So
exactly. So we really encourage you to check this out. It's a standout, no matter how you look at it. I think we can all agree on that. One of his best, and but of course we champion his catalog here. We'll be coming back to more of his releases, and so this is just one of many that we encourage you to look at. So.
But
Uh,
is it safe to assume that all three of you would like T-Bone to make another album with Ringo?
yes.
at
Yeah.
this point, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like you said, though, I don't know about after we hear a few, and if it might get kind of samey.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't say like multiple albums, but another one? Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
I would like to hear
Okay.
another.
Sign me up. Absolutely.
Hmm.
All right. Well, I think that rounds out our discussion of Look Up. So why don't we go around and let people know where they can find us, if there's anything in particular they want to mention that's coming up for them. So Darren is the newbie. Uh, we'll start with you.
I wish I felt like a newbie. Um, I'm at WFUV 90.7 FM and WFUV.org, and we have an app. Download the app if you're into downloading apps and listening to radio on devices that have apps on them. I'm on the air Monday through Thursday nights starting at 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. and Saturday afternoons from 1 until 4 p.m. And that's right, 5 days, WFUV. And look for me on Facebook. I have two pages. Darren DeVivo is one. That's you send me a friend request. The other is Darren DeVivo, WFUV DJ and Beatle podcaster or something to that effect. Um, they're sort of redundant. I don't need two pages, but they're there now, and by deleting them, I cause all kinds of problems. So go to either one and we'll be connected, and we will see them there.
Sounds good. All right, Joe.
Okay, I have a YouTube channel. I'm just about to finish my 13th year here. It's not the 14th, I guess, is how it goes. YouTube
Wow.
channel is called Mean Mr. Mayo. And I also have a movie channel. It was a movie channel. It still mainly is, but I'm getting into other aspects of nostalgia and collecting and memorabilia. And every week I change the title of that YouTube channel. Right now it's called Mayo's Cinestalgia. Instead of just, it's a little tough to say, but Mayo's
Spell.
Cinestalgia. Well, there's no sense going over what you already know. I was just trying to think of something that fit that, and I couldn't think of a good name that fit that. So that's it for me, I think. I just recently, oh no, I recently was with Kit, all right, on a show for Ed Rising, and it's, as far as I know, it's not up yet.
No, not yet, not as of this recording, but probably by the
It
time
will
this
be
is
by the
out.
time this is on, because
It will be.
probably. So that's it for me right now, I believe.
Mhm. Okay, Ken?
All right, if you want to get in touch with me, my email address is everylittlething@att.net. You can also friend me on Facebook at Ken Michaels. And speaking of Every Little Thing, my weekly radio show, which is syndicated on some 50 radio stations, if you want to listen to it on demand anytime you want to, you can go to WFDU.FM, Fairleigh Dickinson University's radio station. Look on their archivals page and archive shows and type in Every Little Thing, and you will find the last two shows that they aired on the radio station. Each one runs for 2 weeks. It's the easiest way to listen to my show. Beatle music, solo Beatle music, themes, rarities, interviews, you name it, all mixed together in one show. And on the show that I do with Darren, Things We Said Today, we just did an interview with Ron Griffiths, who was one of the earliest members in the very beginning of the Ivies, the band that became Badfinger. He was part of the group, and he was there when they were making the transition once they had a deal with Apple. He was on Come and Get It, Paul's song, but he was kind of forced out of the band. And if you have the Magic Christian Music album, there's a song that Ron wrote called Dear Angie, which is one of my favorite Badfinger songs. But anyway, we talk about the history of the Ivies and Badfinger. There is a brand new Ivies demo CD. It's also available on vinyl. Darren has the vinyl. It's called How Much Is the Sky? All
Oh,
right.
I love
There's
that cover
19
artwork.
tracks
Mhm.
all together.
But
You got songs on there. Songs on there written by Pete Ham, by Tom Evans, by Ron Griffiths, also Mike Gibbons, their drummer. And as I pointed out to Ron, one of the great things about Badfinger, they're a very small percentage of bands that have many lead singers and many songwriters. Even the drummer, Mike Gibbons, wrote songs. And then later on, when Joey Mallon joined the band, he wrote songs and sang lead. So those bands, like the Beatles and the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac, those bands and Badfinger are kind of rare. Very few of them out there. Badfinger was one of them. And you get to see these songs, which were recorded from 1967 through 69. You could see the development of the band as songwriters that early on. Okay, so we just did an interview with him. Check that out at Things We Said Today. We're on all the audio platforms like Talk More Talk is, and on our YouTube channel. And let's see, on my own YouTube channel, Ken Michaels Radio, I did a show with Beatley Tone, our good friend, who has a great podcast on the internet on YouTube, Beatley Tone, and Dino Viscera, who also has a podcast, which is on his channel, Dino V. That's VEE. And I had the two of them list their top 5 songs that Paul McCartney has never performed live before, even in the Beatle days, that you would like him to do today. Just your own wish list. And then I had them add 2 songs that Paul hasn't done for a while that you'd like him to bring back. So we did a show just on that. And that was a lot of fun. And trying to think of the most recent show that I did. I just did one and it's escaping me now. But anyway, whatever it is, I'm sure is a great show.
Ken has no spare time.
No, it's a busy man.
Oh, you should talk, Kit.
Yeah.
You live on the internet. Anyway, so check out my YouTube channel, Ken Michaels Radio. And my website, by the way, kenmichaelsradio.com, has Beatles trivia on there, as well as loads of interviews with Beatle people. And on the Beatles trivia page, this is my newest prize to give away, Daytime Revolution, the documentary on John and Yoko's week that they spent co-hosting the Mike Douglas Show. And by the way, to add to that, check out the show that we did on Things We Said Today with Eric Nelson, who is the director of this documentary right here. You going to show something there, Darren?
No, I'm just closing my notebook.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Okay, and I think that's everything. If I
Okay.
think of the more recent show, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Abs-
no. I know what it is. I
Very
had Tom
good.
Frangione on my channel, along with
Uh-oh.
Scott O'Rourke, who does his Beatles show on WUSB, the University of Stony Brook. And I had Jeremy Porteralla, who watches this show as well as things we said today. And all three of those guys, along with me, got to see Ringo at the Ryman. So I thought, what better way to talk about those shows than with people that I know that were there? So that is the newest show that I have at Ken Michaels Radio. Check that out. You know, might be a great idea to learn about the shows from people who witnessed it. And those are really special events right there. Ringo performing at the Ryman, which is the old Grand Ole Opry. And yeah, quite a time. We had a quiet time making it.
No, yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
See what you did there.
That's it. Yeah,
Yep. All
and that's
right.
it. I swear that's it for now.
Okay.
We need another show.
That's it.
Yeah, right.
Get cracking. There's nothing there.
All right. And as for me, you can, of course, find me at kiddotool.com and on Facebook at Kiddo Tools Keynotes. Very soon, one of the episodes, actually, by the time you hear this, will be out, but they're slowly trickling out. On Toppermost the Poppermost, the other podcast I co-host with Ed Chen and Marv Cobell. We're coming out with our January 1965 episodes. Again, talking about their history, Beatles history on the charts, but also looking at artists who were there also on the charts who either had a direct connection to the Beatles or maybe influenced them. Sometimes we just find really fascinating stories about certain artists that really have no connection to the Beatles, but they're just fascinating to talk about. So we're continuing our journey through the charts. So please go to toppermostofthepoppermost.net and you can find all of the latest episodes and keep track of when we will release new ones. So there's that. And as I mentioned, in late April, I'm going to be teaching part 2 of my yacht rock class. Had a blast doing part 1 back in December, and got to talk to Dane Donahue, who released a 1978 album that didn't do well in terms of sales, but it is about as yacht rock as you can get, and it had people like Don Henley, Stevie Nicks, a J.D. Souther. The cream of the crop of the era. So had a fascinating conversation with him. So if you sign up for part 2, I may just have some more special guests planned. So just go to Talk More Talk, our Facebook page, and of course I have all the links in the description below of where you can find us. You can find the information on how to register. So hope to see you there for some smooth sailing. So I think that's about it. So want to say thank you to all for tuning in. It is so good to be back. And Darren, welcome to the family. We're so thrilled to
Thank
have
you.
you.
Thank you. I hope I passed the audition.
You more than passed the audition. So for sure. So for Joe, Darren, and Ken, this is Kit saying we're thankful. Encourage you to look up and look out for our next episode. See you then.
Peace.
Bye-bye.